Greetings, my Rotary family. When the history of polio eradication is written, Rotary will take a leading role in this massive, critical global effort. But even among heroes, there are greater heroes, and that's you, members of the PolioPlus Society. You have been steadfast advocates for the children of the world and the people who have devoted the most resources, time, and attention to this effort. No words of thank you will ever suffice. The world's focus has returned to polio once more. People are scared. They're worried about the health and safety of their children. They wonder if their community is next. You know that if the polio virus exists anywhere, it threatens children everywhere. That's why you've taken up this fight for so long and with such vigor. Now, we have the world's attention, and this gives us a unique chance to bring everything we have to this effort and eradicate polio once and for all. I've been on the ground in Pakistan and have talked to the brave people, mostly women, putting in the hard work to vaccinate every remaining child. We have a strategy that's working, but it's demanding resources like nothing we've done before. It's critical that once more we raise $50 million to trigger the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation 2-to-1 match. Together, we can finish the job and give this amazing gift to the children of the world. Thank you for your amazing continuing generosity and for your dedication.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I noticed they're leaving that slide up a little longer last time, just so you can see my artistic capability. That slide was taken at a recent board meeting, actually at President Jen's brother's, Darren's studio in Chicago. And it represents a sort of a different way the board is approaching things these days. The way that we're trying to get some balance into what the board does. I mean, the board meetings are in themselves a lot of fun in many ways, but hey, as Rotarians, we all would need to balance the work we do with the fun we do. And that's good ways to balance our mental health, I think is probably the best way to describe it. So you heard earlier a message from President Jen. I had a great pleasure to hear from her, along with the rest of the board who are in Abu Dhabi right now over the weekend. They're at Director Faiz's summit, Institute and Summit in Abu Dhabi, and they called me up and sang me happy birthday, and that gave me a great lift on Saturday. I was unable to be there for some personal reasons, and it was Jen wanted me to send her very best to each of you. I also chatted with our President-elect Gordon over the weekend, who sent birthday greetings as well, and teased me about who he was supporting in the England versus Senegal soccer game, or football as we know it in the rest of the world. And told me he was looking for a Senegal shirt to wear. Of course, that's the gest you have between a Scotsman and an Englishman. The Scotsman never support the English team. But all this good fun, this good banter got me thinking about what we could do as Rotarians to support each other. And if we look back over the past 2 years, they've been the hardest of times, I think, for the world and for Rotary. We adapted amazingly. But in what period have we ever gone through a global pandemic? Something out of movies before. The start of almost what could have been the next World War. Severe stress through disasters like Hurricane Ian. I myself went through a similar process in 2004 with Hurricane Ivan in the Cayman Islands. And even though we talked about only 2 people having died in that terrible storm, the reality was that many, many more people passed away afterwards through the after effects of it, and also had their mental health significantly and seriously impaired. And I think that's where we are in the world right now. But there's a role that Rotary can play, and it's interesting. Our President-elect Gordon is going to be, I believe, focusing on this as one of his main priorities next year, mental health, that is. He tells a story about how he broke his ankle once, falling clumsily in the garden, I believe, and how many calls he got of sympathy and joking and encouragement at that time. He tells a story at the same time, a close friend of his in his Rotary Club having mental health challenges, and how there was a stigma associated with that, and how few calls of support that individual Rotarian received. So when we're talking about disease prevention and illness, let's also think about the well-being of our club members, the well-being of the people that we live alongside. One way of doing that is balance by bringing a sense of fun in what we do. Sometimes we talk about Rotary as being an addiction. We're addicted to Rotary. I've used it myself, and that's a good addiction, I guess, in some ways, but we need to find balance. And this year, over Christmas, we have an opportunity to do it. Over the holiday season, we have an opportunity to do it. And I'd encourage you all to spend time thinking about how we can create that more caring environment within our clubs to our members, to make sure they understand their value, to make sure they understand that we're with them during these challenging, these difficult times. I think Rotary has a role to play in all of its areas of focus in helping mental health. If you think about it, giving clean water to children, helping mothers and they're sick, young. Disease prevention and illness, of course, is one where we can bring better peace in the world. And all of these things move towards peace. And if you look at our vision statement, it talks about transformational change in the world, regionally, locally, but most importantly, perhaps within ourselves. And for us that's concerned, let's talk about one way that we can make things a little more peaceful for us, maybe by potentially responding to some of your concerns and comments about the times of our meetings. We recognize some of you can't easily make this lunchtime one, and as Art said a little earlier, if you're on, what we'd like to do is to be able to offer you an alternative. So up in front of me, and up in front of you, hopefully, as well, came a poll. So we'd like you to go ahead and answer that poll question. Can everybody see that? I know it popped up on my screen. Okay, so the question is alternative times for ZOOMformation calls. Would you like to have every other month at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, or every third month at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time? And we've got some good results coming up there right now. And then the last one, of course, is keep it at 1 p.m. Eastern. And okay, we'll see what happens with that poll. So without further ado, as that poll goes on, Art, do you want to keep that poll rolling? Do we want to read it, or do we want to go straight into the next presenter?
Jeremy, I'm not sure what came down. So I did see a couple of folks answer that it went down too soon. If you just let us know in the chat, we'll capture the rest of the responses in the chat. Okay. And we'll put it all together.
All right. Well, I just assumed that was the equivalent of the crook pulling me off. It didn't feel like I'd spoken for 8 minutes, but if that wasn't the case, then absolutely fine. Well, let me, before I leave, just wish each of you, all of you, a very, very happy holidays from the bottom of our heart. On behalf of both President Jen, myself, President Gordon, our full ZOOMformation team, and we've enjoyed giving you these performances this year, these productions this year, and we hope you found them valuable as well. Have an amazing Christmas, you and your families, and happy holidays to all of you. So at this point, I think we can probably continue on the sidelines with the poll, and I'd now like to introduce Darragh Zimmerman, because to talk about a very, very important initiative for Rotary, both from a global perspective as well as a regional one for ourselves within the zone. Darragh chairs the Rotary Action Group on Malaria, RAM Global, or RAM Global. Darragh initiated malaria work in 1993 and joined forces with RAM Australia at the 1994 Rotary Convention in Taipei. In 2002, he led the Rotary matching grant to add mosquito nets to vaccine campaigns that took mosquito net distribution to a different scale of over 200 million per year. Amazing number. Along the way, he helped figure out how to take malaria to zero, essentially stealing the best ideas he can find and sharing them around the world. A member of the Normal Rotary Club in Normal, Illinois since 1983, Darragh manages money and keep bees and does an amazing job leading the fight against malaria on a global basis. Darragh, over to you and welcome.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It wasn't I who figured out all of those things, but I have a hand in stealing many of those ideas. I mean, borrowing, adapting the best ideas that we can find. I think it's part of the Rotary Creed that we find the best ideas and go on. Before we start, I'd like to celebrate that 20-year anniversary 20 years ago, right now, we were doing the first net distribution and matching grants. How many of you remember matching grants? Isn't that wonderful? Yep, it was in Lara District, Ghana. We took 14,600 nets, and now we are up to over 200 million nets. When I say, use the phrase go to scale, this is exactly what I mean. We took nets to scale, one district, next year was 4 districts, then we had a full country, the multi-country. That's exactly what we are doing right now with community healthcare workers, and we're bringing the entire world together. So we're taking global malaria to 0, and within Rotary, we're taking malaria to scale so that Rotarians know how to do it. The other tip of the hat is PolioPlus. Everything we do is based on what is known as the Rotary model. PolioPlus wasn't just about polio, it turned into pluses. The pluses for polio are vaccines like MMR and vitamin A vaccine-like things, interior spraying, and then mosquito nets. We put mosquito nets inside a polio vaccination campaign that was also going on in Lara District, Ghana. And that's how we got it to scale. It is those partners that formed the Alliance for Malaria Prevention with Rotarians as one of the co-founders. I'm still on the core group is what we call it, to coordinate there. Well, many of you know what malaria is. It's a bloodborne disease that gets transmitted first, by mosquitoes mostly. The first part of what causes it is the bite of a mosquito, but it comes from humans, goes by way of the mosquito to other people. And here's the rather complex slide that has all of that on it. We aren't going to go into much of the symptoms here, but the symptoms are just terrible. They make you feel beat up and bad. I know that none of you have ever had a hangover and a cold or COVID at the same time, but I've been told that it's about like that. Where are there cases in malaria? As you notice from this map, it is no longer off in Asia Pacific very much, or in the Americas. It's mostly in Africa. Fortunately, the idea is to take malaria to 0. We've been able to capture over here in Asia Pacific countries where the Australian Rotarians are extremely active and extremely effective. And we're taking those methods and taking them to Africa, where we're back down the scale of scaling up to the full country. There's some countries that have community healthcare workers, they have nets, but they're training people on nets. So the impacts of malaria on society are intense. Basically, they cause a lot of deaths. There'll be more deaths this year from malaria than there are from COVID. COVID aced it out 1 year. But the sickness is the worst part, because when people are sick, they don't show up at work. They have to stay home to take care of their kids, or the kids die, of course, and that's terrible. There were over 1 million deaths a year when we started. Now they're about 600,000, and we have the infrastructure in place to take it down. So when you don't have malaria, you can show up at work, you feel good, you can tend your crops, you can plant them and tend them and sell them. The economic input is intense. Were any of you at the Rotary Convention in Copenhagen and that was back when Jeff Sachs spoke? Jeff Sachs, I helped him prep for that, and we had a big debate on how many dollars of output you get from $1 into malaria control. Neither of us could get below $100 of impact for every dollar you put in. It might be a few dollars less right now, but it's still intense. So Rotarians are absolutely key, because what we do is make that final connection. Yes, we've worked on the high scale of connecting up the global partners and getting nets and community healthcare workers and getting the protocols out. But what we do more than anybody else and better than anybody else is connect the dots. We connect the Rotarians in country with the specialists, with community healthcare workers, with the trainers. We are building the educational system, the healthcare system, training the workers to go after malaria. And then after malaria, as we'll get to, polio. Well, not after polio. Polio is malaria, then excuse me, I misspoke. Then on to other diseases like safe water for all, nutrition for all. And how we did it, we were following the Rotary method. And that Rotary model has taken us there. So these are coming in. We have lots of Rotarians everywhere, all across Africa, who are really doing, Rotary is global, so we have the connections globally. When I wanted to go see go to the World Health Organization to talk to the malaria folks, I mentioned the word Rotary, and I had an invite immediately. I went to Geneva and talked with them. That was in the mid-90s, and we worked out what to do. But more importantly, Rotary is local. Rotarians can connect that global big concept, the big money that these other people raise, and the big inputs, and take them down to the local level. What we do better than anybody else is connect. So Rotarians connect. And in Africa, this is becoming absolutely essential. We have projects going in East Africa, West Africa, and in many of the countries. So here are the districts in Africa, and we have activities in almost every, we have actual global grants. We have activities going in almost every district already. And we draw from our relationships with people in those other districts and other countries where Alliance for Malaria Prevention is working to build a better game. So why go after malaria is one of the first questions. Because we can train the people, we can coordinate, we can train the community healthcare systems, we organize the entire system, and we're building a data system. Why we're talking about that is because we can use malaria control to build the systems, to train the workers, and gather the data so that as we get close to ending malaria, we are learning and training ourselves. We're doing test experiments. We're doing proof of concepts. How do we keep the community health workers trained? What do we train them on after that? So we are using the malaria work to train the community healthcare workers and to build the entire system. And this is working. It's working really well. We're also using it. So let me keep clicking through here. How do we get to zero? It's rather simply a 1, 2, 3 steps. Nets, which we've already got going into place, lower the malaria by 60 to 90%. Community health care workers are pretty much everywhere in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia Pacific elsewhere. What we do not have, what they did not have until some Rotarians got in, is they didn't get trained specifically on malaria. So here's a community health care worker, and they did not collect as much data. So if you get the Rotarian magazine, I assume all of you got it, this last issue, you're going to see on your screen right now, you see one of the hand-filled cards that the community healthcare workers do. What we at RAM Global and partnering with other efforts are doing is trying to get this information digital so that we have it immediate. Going back to Lower District in Ghana 20 years ago, literally, any of you remember Palm Pilots? We used refurbed Palm Pilots, sort of not cell phones, to do all the collect the data, and by the end of the week's distribution of 14,600 nets, we, one, knew where all those nets went. Number two, we had the data of who got what net, where they went. And for any of you who are concerned about reliability of where your money's going, we knew where every one of the 14,600 nets went. We have, it's a rather sneaky way, you collect great data, then you know where your money went. We got it. And now we are training up community healthcare workers to get to zero. We know from polio that it takes 3 years of no polio to get to zero. Same deal with malaria. And so as we get near zero, we train the community healthcare workers to create their healthier communities. And we have to keep them trained on other stuff because there's no more malaria. Governments are already pulling out their support. So we have to keep them trained. If we can keep them trained on malaria, that's our task. The other 95% of their training goes to other stuff. And they pick and work with us to train it to get to the other stuff. So Malaria Plus is where we're looking beyond this. We provide clean water. We have partnerships already with a lot of other groups to provide clean water, prevent other diseases. And as they keep the nets up, we're trying to create jobs. We're trying to figure out whatever the people need in that particular area. It is local that decides. However handsome we may be, I mean, you're used to having to put on sunglasses when you see Ellen Blasi just because of the glow of her personality and everything. We may be beautiful and the best looking people in the world, I joke, but it is they who solve it. So they're probably better looking than some of us here. So we're training them. And as you see here, we have Muslim cultures as well as other cultures that we're dealing in. A lot of what we're doing is trying to figure out the cultural shift that we need. One of the things we learned from polio, we have had technical solutions to polio for what, 40 years anyway, maybe 50 years, maybe 60 years. What we do not have, and we still don't have in certain areas, are the social connections to get those technical implements, the vaccines, out to everybody. So Rotarians are good at helping fill in that last gap. In northern Nigeria, it was Rotarians who helped coordinate getting to the last numbers of kids to get the polio vaccine out. So we were really thrilled about that. In Niger, that's exactly what happened. We got that. We added mosquito nets to the vaccination campaigns, and we got the vaccination rates above where they needed to go, which is about 80%. Same thing is happening in other areas. So we're getting here. We distributed treated nets, and we added some. We trained community healthcare workers, and we leave a better system behind us. And so we're on our way towards zero malaria. We've done it in Asia Pacific. Many, many thanks to the people over in Asia Pacific, because we're adding to those grants. So how you can help, we have 2 global grants open right now. One is with RAM Australia, the other is with Malaria Partners International out of Seattle. And that one is in Zambia to retrain the community healthcare workers. In Australia, they are working in West Timor, where we're solving several of the key issues. I mentioned the UN there because one of the things that we do is work with the international organizations to take it to zero. We partnered with the Global Fund. There's a formal MOU on that. And that is, the formal MOU is to raise $12 million. And that is Finish the Fight Asia Pacific. We're going to rebrand that to Finish the Fight India, Finish the Fight Zambia, Finish the Fight Uganda. We have grants coming in Zambia, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and elsewhere. So we're going to have Finish the Fight. We also partner with the other major donors to that, which is PMI. Global Fund is the largest, putting in $1.2 billion per year. The U.S. President's Malaria Initiative, which is the CDC and USAID, put in about $775 million per year. And we also partner with local. We make sure that everybody's connected to the local situation. And so Rotarians and others don't put in that much money, quite frankly, but we are the key solution to that. So how you can help is to join RAM Global. It's free. And the next is support RAM Global directly. You can give money to that or give grants to the Rotary Foundation. We use the grants to prove the points that we then share with the others. And as we wrap this up, I request that you find a malaria person in your district who would like to help get everybody educated on malaria in your district. So discs are one of the things. We'll be happy to work with them. These are the 2 grants that we have, and over the weekend I got a 3rd grant, but it's still in German. I'll translate that in the near future. And we'll have more information on ramglobal.org. And then I'll give you, as a final thing, thank you so much as I hand this off. I want to give you a big thanks. If you need to contact me directly, please do. There's more info on the breakout room. So please join us in the breakout room. Contact me directly. Get on the RAM Global website. And you can also contact Ellen Blasi. So thank you for everything.
Thanks,
We
Drake.
really appreciate the help.
Thanks, Drake. Amazing presentation and update. It's a tremendous program. It really is. And it reminds me of some of the other programs of scale, even programs such as hand washing, those audacious programs out there that really got so much value out of seeing the delivery systems and the lessons we learned from End Polio, of course. Yeah. And certainly, obviously, End Polio is the gold standard when it comes to Rotary programs, and we can learn so much from End Polio and I'm sure you have used it within RAM as well. Congratulations, keep up the great work. So now, as a segue into Polio, it gives me great pleasure to give us an update. I'd like to invite our Polio Now coordinator from Zone 34, Nick Hall, to do just that. Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. You know, after listening to the inspiring message that Jennifer Jones gave at the beginning, I'm not even going to say anything about why we need to promote the effort. And neither am I going to recite the current polio-related statistics. This, after all, should be a positive holiday season, and the numbers aren't all that good this year. So what I'm going to do instead is address what I consider to be the proverbial elephant in the room and the way it's impacting the polio campaign. And that proverbial elephant happens to be the politicization of COVID vaccines and its impact upon PolioPlus. It's a problem that I firmly believe that we need to face head on. Now, this pie chart, the next image, was published in the Rotarian magazine in October. And it happens to depict how funds raised to combat polio were spent last year. All of the expenditures are important, and I might add essential. However, notice that the largest portion of the spending was spent on something which, in my opinion, should not be necessary. Of the $149 million total, the largest expenditure, comprising more than 1/3 of the total, was the $53.6 million to combat vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. As noted in the image, the situation has worsened since the COVID pandemic. When considering the 2-to-1 Gates Foundation match, it means Rotary's entire 1/3 portion was spent to counter misinformation. Now, since 2015, I've pedaled my bicycle more than 10,000 miles across and up and down the United States to raise money to support PolioPlus. Prior to the arrival of COVID, I was thanked along the way for my efforts. The proven efficacy of vaccines was never in doubt. However, the responses have been very different on the trips since COVID. During the recent rides from Seattle to Tampa in 2020, and then this past summer from Seattle, Washington to San Diego, I heard the same arguments regarding COVID being applied to all vaccines, including polio. For example, vaccines are not effective in children. Getting the disease and developing natural immunity is more effective than vaccines. Vaccines can damage your DNA. These are just a sampling. Even worse, these statements are being voiced by prominent politicians in the United States in the context of COVID, but which those who seem to lack critical thinking skills are now applying to all vaccines, including polio, as I discovered during my most recent cross-country cycling trip down the Pacific coast. This is not related to the COVID, but I was approached by a lady at a restaurant in Oceanside, California, where I was taking a coffee break. And she remarked about the sign I had on the back of a bicycle promoting the End Polio campaign. She says, well, you know, vaccines aren't going to help polio because everybody knows that polio is caused by antibiotics. I resisted the urge to give her a quick lecture on the difference between viruses and bacteria and just ignored her. Now, I agree, as Rotarians, we should not involve ourselves in politics. However, I think an exception needs to be made when the politicization of vaccines necessitates that 1/3 of the polio funds being spent combating vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. Just as polio vaccines use an attenuated form of the virus to fight paralysis, I believe we need to use an attenuated form of politics to combat vaccine hesitancy and misinformation. I thank you again, Jeremy, for the opportunity to express these concerns. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker. And she spent a month in England as a group study exchange participant before joining Rotary. Started the Alumni Association, District 7600, that was recognized as the Alumni Association of the Year at the Hamburg Convention, and then was featured in the May 2020 issue of Rotarian magazine's cover story, Up and Comers Never Too Young to Lead. So please welcome past District Governor Clenise Plattt.
Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate the introduction as well as the information that has been shared with everybody. You know, it's a pleasure for me to be here to talk about You've Been Served. When we started this particular initiative last year, we had no idea what would happen. What we did know is that we were going to provide an opportunity for interactors, Rotaractors, as well as Rotarians to come together and make a difference in their communities. We knew that it was going to be an opportunity to collaborate across states and country, different districts with different clubs. And we also knew that we could be able to provide an opportunity for our Rotarians and Rotaractors and interactors to have resources available to them on the rotaryserves.org. This was an opportunity to come together collectively and to speak about service above self in a way that really impacted our communities and that allowed our collective voices to be heard across the world. It was an initiative that would begin on Rotary International's anniversary and end during the week of Paul Harris's birthday. Well, I'm just going to tell you, you all just knocked the results out of the park. It was wonderful. When we look at this actual quote from Paul Harris about how Rotary changes us and those we serve, and he says, I believe we can change the world one life at a time. And you all have certainly more than, I would say, 1,000-fold actually done that. 80 plus clubs participated across the zones, 104 local and global You've Been Served projects occurred, 2,550 volunteers, and then, drum roll please, 26,718 volunteer hours over 60 days. And you know, it was great to collect the opportunity or to hear what people had to say. These are some of the quotes. One of the things that I loved, someone says, this initiative has shown me that just one act of kindness can positively impact many lives in our community. It just takes one action, whether it is to donate 1 can of tuna, 1 volunteer hour, a toy for the sensory wall, or funds to buy a water tank. It has a tremendous capacity to make significant changes to those in need in other areas across the British Virgin Islands. And then, of course, I loved this particular, I mean, this is just a small sampling, really, of what people said, but somebody said this project was truly impactful and humbling. Being able to put a smile on some faces by the simple act of giving meals shows that we, as volunteers, need to continue the work that we are doing. These meaningful acts of service drive Rotaractors like myself to continue to put service above self for the greater good of our society. And I just love that. When we think about how we are really making a difference and the ways that we came together to do that, you know, I could talk all day, but the truth of the matter is that images speak louder than words. So hopefully the video will work. So I'm really excited to say that our Rotary International Director, Jeremy, has given us the green light to do this again. It speaks to what his comments were at the beginning today about creating a more caring environment. And we have that opportunity to do just that again together. It's going to start again on February 23rd, Rotary's anniversary, and end on Sunday, April 23rd, during the week of Paul Harris's birthday. This is a no barriers event that all clubs, interactors, Rotaractors, and Rotarians are free to be a part of. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have any money. You don't have to be a large club. You don't have to be a big club, a small club. You can just do what your club wants to do, find ways to collaborate with each other, with other clubs across the states, across the country, schedule an existing program or project that you do in your communities during that time period. And please know that we will have our website updated in February as well. So we'll have the You've Been Served cards so that you can give those again. We'll have the opportunity for you to upload your events, photos, and tell your You've Been Served stories on the website again. Thank you so much to each of you who participated before. We want to offer that opportunity for more people to join the fun and be with us on the committee to help us with connecting with clubs, telling the You've Been Served stories, collecting and updated You've Been Served documents and materials. You can email me at crotary06@gmail.com and put in the subject You've Been Served Committee, and I'll put my email address in the chat box as well. Thank you, of course, to past RI Director Peter Kyle, the YBS team, of course, RI Director Jeremy Hurst, Art McQueen, and Sean Patty for helping us with this today. Thank you all so much, and happy holidays, everybody. And now it's my great opportunity to introduce you all to Sandra Hemstead. Sandra, take it away.
Thank you, Clenise, and thank you so much for that summary of all the wonderful things that you've done through the You've Been Served initiative. I want to start with a big thank you as well. And I feel like Giving Tuesday, which we just experienced, is one of those ways that we allow Rotary and the Rotary Foundation to serve in our local areas and internationally. It's sort of a big hug that we give through Giving Tuesday. I also want to thank you for your response to Hurricane Ian and District 6960's disaster activities. You've given funds, you've given goods, things like supplies, and now we're starting to get things like mattresses and beds and drywall and things that are needed in large trucks. So it's just been absolutely incredible. You've given volunteer hours, which, having our fellow Rotarians working side by side, has been truly impactful. And we are in District 6960, which is my home district, getting some global grant opportunities together. So there will be some additional opportunities for support. Now, I thought this month I would give you the results, a few of the results as of October, which are the last reports that we have. Annual fund for Zone 33, we're at 1.4 million, and that's at $41 per capita. It's down slightly from last year, but recall that last year was an extremely good year and a record-breaking year. So I think Zone 33 is doing quite well. Annual fund for Zone 34 is at 1.25 million, also at about $41 per capita, and it is up 10% from last year to date. And again, a good result for the zone. I wanted to just touch on the polio numbers. I know Nick didn't give those, but polio for Zone 33 is just almost 800,000 in cash plus DDF, and that's $23 per capita. So that's a pretty good result. Polio for 34 is a little over 400,000. That's again cash plus DDF, and that is up about 1.5% from last year. Now the DDF has been slow to be allocated to PolioPlus, and so I wanted to mention that the reports that we've been waiting for, DDF reports to be corrected, they are now correct. So I would like to ask each of the districts that are on the call to go back and take a look at your DDF and allocate your percentage of DDF to PolioPlus, and we're hoping that we get to 20% per district. So lastly, just a couple of reminders. We're at the point in time where year-end giving is important. So you have some individuals who are needing to make minimum distributions and wanting to get their gifts in by the end of the year. So please reach out to your clubs, reach out to the non-giving clubs to please ask them to make a gift, and make sure that the treasurers are giving their E-rate, because sometimes that's forgotten amongst all the busyness of the holidays. But we want to make sure that that gets in before the end of the year as well. So lastly, there are some deadlines for giving to be counted towards the end of the year, so pay attention to those as well. I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday, and thank you all for being here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Marshall Butler, our Zone 34 Regional Public Image Coordinator. Take it away, Marshall.
Great, thank you so much, Sandra. I appreciate that introduction, and great to be here today. A real quick update for everyone from a public image perspective in Zones 33, 34. In the next few weeks, the Zones 33, 34 public image teams are undertaking a project where we're going to enhance the social media presence for our zones. We've put together a comprehensive strategy that's really going to help decrease some of the noise across the various channels that we have. We want to make sure that we're communicating effectively. And so this is something that's going to be done by the Zones 33 and 34 public image teams, 33 led by RPIC Billy Black. Speaking of communicating effectively, incoming RPIC Susan Courtner did a fantastic job last week with a webinar on using email to communicate effectively. And it was really fantastic, really nailed all the key strategies that folks should be using as we communicate with clubs, districts, members, and stuff like that. So go check that out at www.elevaterotary.org. Zones 33 and 34 will kick up the training opportunities again in the new year. So be on the lookout for all those announcements. I know our pick Billy Black has a lot of things on the schedule, as does the Zone 34 team. So keep an eye out for those. And again, it's a busy time of the year here in December, but you can't forget to make sure that we stay consistent in telling the Rotary story and using public image strategies to share the good work that Rotary does. We've heard from Clenise about all the great You've Been Served projects, all the great things that we do across our zones. We've heard from Sandra Hemstead, who talked about all the great things that we do with our foundation. And it's kind of, public image is that glue that pulls it all together and tells all these great stories. And it's a great time to attract new members into Rotary. So remember how you can use your public image strategies during the month of December to kick off the 2023 year with a bang. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Rotary Coordinator Mike Darragh for his update. Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Marshall. On the membership side, we have more monthly MAP webinars coming up. In each webinar, we deliver 2 to 3 bite-sized proven ideas that clubs can implement fairly quickly. It helps them increase their impact on their members and on their community. Just a quick review of what we've covered so far. From August to November, we helped clubs with easy ways to first find prospective members, discover what Rotary is and what it can do for those members, onboard new members so they immediately get engaged, and improve their club's attractiveness using different membership types and club formats so they meet today's needs. Next Monday, we'll have our Ask Us Anything session, where we've asked members to give us their questions as they register. We'll answer their questions on the webinar, and we expect some of the questions will probably become topics for future webinars. This will be a great time to hear concerns from clubs and to learn ways to solve them. And don't forget one of the most important MAP webinars coming up on January 16th, how to be an irresistible club. Nothing happens in Rotary if it doesn't happen in a club. And having a club that excites and motivates its members to create value for each other and for their community. That's the bedrock that makes Rotary a success. So come and join us and encourage clubs to join us. Our two districts consistently rank as the top two in North America. Even if your club is outstanding, you won't stay there long if you don't find fresh ideas to stay relevant. These webinars find those great ideas from successful clubs and share them across our zones. So see you next Monday. And let me hand this over to Susan Courtner, who will tell you what else is coming up. Susan?
Thanks, Mike, and thank you to all of our speakers today. What great information was shared. If you loved this Zoomformation call, make sure you join us next year in 2023. Our next call will be in February. And in the meantime, we have a lot of really great activities come up. So mark your calendars for some of these opportunities that you see on the screen here, like Empowering Girls and Rotary Works and the Membership Action Plan. These are also great opportunities to learn a lot more about some of these topics. Now, the next portion of the meeting will be to join the breakout sessions. Each of our speakers here today have their own individual sessions, and there's also one that will be a visit with Director Jeremy. So if you'd like to visit with Jeremy, learn more on malaria, talk to Clenise about the You've Been Served, or visit with some of the coordinators, those are the options for the breakout rooms. You should see a breakout icon at the bottom of your screen to join. Just click on that icon and select the breakout that you'd like to jump into. If you're using the Zoom application on your mobile device, you should see the icon appear at the top left-hand section of your screen. Dial-in users are not going to be able to access the breakout rooms. If you have trouble joining a room, just hang out here and you can either type in the chat section which breakout room you would like to join, and we'll gladly move you over, or just unmute and let us know and we'll pop you into that room. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you on the next Zoomformation call.